Welcome to All Things Possible TV. I'm excited to have you here with me. Today's episode is, are you a giver or a taker? With this episode, I want to first begin by saying I want to be a giver and have you go to our website at allthingspossible.biz. That's allthingspossible.biz and receive your 7 traits. We have 7 traits that will help you create your life to have all things possible, and that is free to you. And I'd love for you to go to get that. Also, if you will go to the Contact Us tab, I would love to give you a free strategy session on how you can move your life forward and have a direct call and get that strategy session and move forward. So right off the bat, we're going to start with being a giver. But this is really a serious topic. Many people have gotten into this mentality that they are entitled. In society, many years ago, it was always about you had to work hard for what you got. Everything that you did was to benefit yourself and others, not just yourself. As the people in society worked, they did it to create better gain for everyone. It was for community involvement and to move everyone forward, not just each man out for himself. And over the years, we have come to this entitlement, and if you don't really have this affecting your life, you haven't noticed, go meet a few teenagers or early 20s. And this is not about judgment, so please don't take it that way. This is about they feel entitled. Children feel entitled to be like, well, give me this, and I get this handout, I get that handout. Even our government gave handouts, gave things to help the economy and to change things, and yet, did it work? What I want to tell you is that giver and taker are huge. They're completely different spectrums on different ends of the spectrum. And it's very important that we learn how to become a giver rather than a taker. And if we are having an issue in being that taker and the receiver, which we're going to talk next week about the giver and the receiver, but being that person that constantly is the taker and takes advantage of that situation, it can be changed. It's simple choices and simple steps to change those habits so that your life is more abundant, so that you're more blessed. Let's talk about this a little bit deeper. Let's dig in deeper and really use some examples to show you what I'm talking about, because being a giver versus the taker is totally different. They're completely different. I was in a training that we had for, it was about 4 days. And in this training, you stood in front of someone and you just looked at them for a few seconds and said, giver or taker. Then one side of the circle took a step left, faced another person, giver or taker. Now, we had not been in the training long enough to really know each other well enough to know if they were really a giver or really a taker. We'd been in for long enough that some of us knew well what some people were in the group. But overall, you didn't know everyone. A lot of this was taken from judgment. A lot of people would just look at you and think, oh, you're a high maintenance blonde and you have all these wants and wishes, right? So there were a few people that when they were looking at me, judged me and said, oh, taker, taker. Now, I had plenty that had anything to do with me that would say, oh, giver, giver. And as we did this process, it really brought up a lot of feelings for me, but for a lot of people in the group, because we were being judged on whether we were a giver or a taker the whole time. People do that in real life every day. They look at you and they judge from their first impression if you're a giver or a taker. And what I mean by giver versus taker, are you a person that volunteers to help in a community event? Are you a person that volunteers to help serve? Are you someone who will pick up that paper off the floor that somebody else dropped just to pick up after somebody, just to clean it up, to have a nicer place? Do you leave that campsite a better place than when you got there? That's a giver. Are you the person that expects people to hand things over to you? You expect for that discount, and you have that coupon that's expired, but you're demanding that they make it right, that they stand behind it. Are you the person that only goes to a store if they have a lost leader and you only get those items so that they lose money on you coming to their store? Are you someone who, absolutely only does bare minimum? Do you go to the barbecue and you take the pack of buns and everybody else brings this big amount? That would be a taker. In every aspect of our life, we are either being a giver or a taker. There is not an in-between. You can't be neither. You either are one or the other. At all times in our life, we are either giving or we are taking. And the only thing I will say that is different than that is if we are on the receiving end, because without receivers, we can't be givers. And that we're going to get into great depth next week. So don't hold me to that one until next week. But what I want you to realize is, if we're not about making it better for someone or making life happy, we're taking away. If we're not adding to, we are taking away. I have a group that is called BNI. It's a networking group. It's Business Networking International. It's all over the world. Thousands and thousands of people are in this. And their motto is givers gain, which means those who give referrals to the other business members in the group will gain, because as you give, you receive. Because if you're willing to give out referrals for other people, they're willing to give you referrals of their family and friends and loved ones and their neighbors and their associates, business partners and whatnot. At BNI, every single week we get together and we have an accounting. There is an accounting on this, and that's why it works so well. But you get to stand up and say how many referrals you gave. It doesn't say how many did you take. It doesn't say let's keep track of who can take the most. It's who can give the most. And when we do our monthly charts and put on the board who gave the most referrals for the whole month, it's who gave. Who is the giver and who is moving forward because of being the giver. Givers gain. It's true. If you want more abundance in your life, give. There's a good book, and most of you know the good book. There's a story about a widow's mite in the book. It talks about this widow, and all she had was a mite, and that was a small, 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 small amount to give. But to her, it was all she had. So she gave all she had, and she benefited by doing this. It was looked at not that she only gave a mite, but that she gave all she could. That is what giving is about. Giving all you can give. I've had people tell me, you talk a lot about buy their gas or buy their groceries or serve and do all these things. You talk a lot about that. What if I'm not in the position to do that? What can you give? Can you take cookies to the fireman? Can you write a note? I would have given anything for someone to have made that phone call to my brother that made the difference in whether or not he committed suicide. It can be a phone call. It can be making a difference. I had a client just last week when I was doing a mentoring appointment that she's out of state, so we were doing it all online, and she said, I cannot thank you enough. I would not be here had I not worked with you and your husband. It can be a phone call. It can be doing something that they can't do for themselves. I think we need to get really careful in this area though, because so much of the time what happens is we do this and we boast about it. And I tell you different experiences, and I hope that you understand I tell these experiences for you to relate to what I could do, not what I am doing. I am not telling you of my experiences for a pat on the back or be like, oh, you're such a good girl. No, we stay anonymous. We've done a Sub for Santa for 30 years. Well, 29. 29 Christmases. We're pushing into our 30th this year. And what I can tell you is we have been anonymous every year. Only once have we gotten caught. And we got caught because someone in the neighborhood knew that we did it and knew the involvement and told the person who it would have to have been. And that family felt so guilty that they had received this huge Christmas and, you know, no strings attached on our part. We were anonymous, and we have never, even to this day, admitted it was us. But yet, the relationship was never the same. They felt like they had to reciprocate or give us something or do something for us. And that's never been why we've done service. We've done service all of our life because it's what we're about. We want to be givers. And our lives are blessed because of it. We receive all the time. I guess we've never been good, gracious receivers until an experience that we had to. And so that is a whole different part. But we've always wanted to be givers rather than takers, because we know that as we are givers in our world, we create a better environment for ourselves. When we create something to be better for us, it goes out and the energies of that come back. Now, it depends on why you're doing it. If you go mow a neighbor's lawn and brag and boast and be like, la la la, la la la, we're so awesome, I did this, and you just got your reward. If your reward is for people to know about it and pat you on the back and be like, oh, good girl, way to go, that's your reward. If you stay anonymous about it and you just do it because it's part of your life, the abundance that comes back into your life is usually tenfold. You get more than you gave. And it depends on why you're doing it. If you are being a giver because you're like, oh, this one's going to pay off, I'm going to go and do this just so these people will give back to me, then you probably won't see it because you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You'll see it in a different way that may not affect you the way you're thinking it will. What happens is we need to find deep inside our heart why we want to do this. Do we want to do this because it betters us as a person? Because it can change our world and make it a better place? Because it can give happiness to another person? Are those the reasons that you want to be a giver? Or is it because you don't want to be on the taker list? It all depends on what you want. What your outcome will be depends on what your intention is. Intention's huge. I know that there's several times that we have done things that are just off the cuff. You know, I see somebody walking down the street, they look like they need something, I pull over and hand them some money. Or, you know, you stop at the stop sign and you see people asking for money. We'll work for food, but yet they're standing on the side of the road. And is it working? They'll get some money, and most of them make really good money. But even if you gave to them and they didn't really need, you will still be given back. The world and the energy of it is the universe will be fair. What you give out is what you get back multiplied. So say you give $10 to somebody standing on the corner and they go home and that's how they make money, and they didn't really need it. Okay, they still got the $10, right? But your life is going to be blessed, even if you messed up and gave it to someone who didn't need it. And I don't think that's messing up. If that's what they really need to do, let them do it. A lot of people that are out there need it, and they don't have another way. Their life hasn't been as blessed as yours. So be willing to give. And it doesn't always have to be money. You can give of your time. You can watch the neighbor's kids. You can do plenty of things that will make a difference for others, that will come back to you. But be careful of your intention. When we have been doing stuff for Santa, and we've kept it anonymous and secret, and for lots of years we never even admitted that we were doing it because we didn't want people to know, and we'd had such a bad experience in the first few years with this one that found out, and we had to deny it and avoid them and all this stuff. So over the years we got to where, you know, that's just what we did. and the people that were around us knew that we did it. And the people that became our contact people know that we call every year and say, okay, so do you have some families, and where are the needs, and what can we do? When we do this, we do it not to be like, what are we going to get by doing this? That's never, ever the reason that our family has done this. It has always been about, what could we do to make life better? The families that we have chosen over the years have been families that have come up onto a crisis. A medical crisis, a job loss, a burned down home, something that's tragic and just, it's a bad year. Those are the ones that we love to pick, because it's not someone that's signing up for the club every year. You know, Sub for Santas has gotten huge. Gift trees has gotten great. I love that more people are involved with this. I love, love, love it. But I also see the list that comes to us every year, and we as a family have chosen to only do a family once. So if they're on the list again, great, let somebody else help them if that's what they want to do. But we aren't doing this to find a list that we have somebody sign up for every year. This is about someone who's really needing it, someone who really is on the outs and gets to be a receiver. And I say gets to be, because until we got to be a receiver, I had never had to do that. And it's tough to be a receiver, especially in those desperate times of need, and you haven't been a receiver in the past. What happens when we're a taker and we continually be a taker? We become someone who feels that everybody owes it to us. We feel entitled. Let me give you a couple examples. In your family, there's a few siblings. And for some of you, not as many as others. I am from Utah, so we do have more. But in your family, you have siblings. And I want you to think about it and think, who is the one that's most likely to take care of mom and dad? Who's the caretaker? Who's the one that keeps peace? And who is the one that's always stirring the pot? That's always like, well, that's not fair, and they got this and they got that. You know, I can tell you story after story with own personal experience with families and in-laws and stuff on who was the taker, who was the receiver, who became the giver. And it's interesting because as soon as you think you know someone and you think you know what they're going to do, sometimes they'll surprise you. But most of the time we can tell. There's usually a sibling that always gets their way. They throw a fit, they make sure that it's their way, and that they benefit the most, no matter what. And especially in the loss of parents and you're splitting everything up, ugly fights, right? Who was the giver, who was the taker? Because almost every time there is a giver and a taker. At least one giver, one taker. And that's the way life is. There's always people giving and taking. But when we become the taker and the taker takes priority in our life, it affects all areas. So, when I say that, if you're the taker, don't be surprised when your tire goes flat. Don't be surprised when your fridge quits working, and don't be surprised when life happens, because it is part of that energy of what abundance you put out comes back. If you're continually taking and taking and taking, things will be taken from you. So, with that said, be careful. Be conscious. So much of the time we don't realize that we're not even being conscious about it until we go, oh, I guess I never was a PTA president or an officer, or I never did sign up to actually help. I was a room mother once or twice, right? Yet our kids were in the system and they had parents that were very involved and givers the whole time. And we just became the taker. That was like, oh, I want my kids to have good school and good environment, but I don't want to really give my time, right? Those are the things I want you to think about, because we can easily get into that lackadaisical, I've done my time, I'm not doing it again, did it once, don't have to do it again. Now, I'm not saying you have to be the coach of the Little League team the whole, through every year. Now, some dads like that. That's awesome. But you do need to give. We need to become the giver, because as we give, we receive. And as we give, we make our environment stronger. We make it better. One of the examples I want to tell you about is I live on a street, we're out in the mountain, and homes are about every 5 acres, 2.5 to 5 acres. And we had a new family move in. I have had nothing to do with them. I've been so busy I haven't stopped by. That's totally unlike me. Well, somebody called me and said, oh, so did you meet these neighbors and this and this and this, and did you know this and this and this? And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't even know them. I've now even said hello. I couldn't even tell you how many kids they have. And they said, oh my gosh, that's so not like you. You usually are one of the first people to show up. And it really made me feel some guilt because I was like, I have just been busy. I haven't made it a priority, and I slacked off. And yet, here I am, living on the same street, being a taker. Because if the fire comes, if there's bad guys, I'm definitely going to want these people to be like, call 911 or help out or let us know if something happens while we're gone out of town, right? We all want that. But are we the one that went to welcome the new neighbor? Are we the one that said, hey, this is who I am, call me anytime, be great to get to know you? Are we putting ourselves out there being a giver? Or are we just sitting back going, I'm too busy, life's just too hectic, I have no time to get to know who they are? Because that's totally the attitude I took this last time. Not intentionally, but I did. I became the taker on this deal. And that's nothing I'm proud of. I'll admit it, and I'll tell you, now I get to go do something different for the neighbors. But usually when somebody will call and say, usually you're the one that's first to their house, I was like, you know what, I am. So why am I not being that? Embrace being a giver. Embrace being involved. It's not about the amount. Like I said, it can be a stop by. This is who I am. We're glad you're here. Like, it's good to get to know you. How old are your kids? Oh, there's some really great kids down the street. They're this age and this age and this age. It doesn't have to look a certain way, but it does have to come from you. You do have to be the person to put it out there, to make the difference, and really engage in being a giver. Givers engage. When we go to a party, who's throwing the party? Who bought all the napkins and all the paperware and their house is trashed? That's the giver. Every time. And yet it's the same people, right? It's the same family members that will have the family party. It's the same people that will plan it. And everybody else is like, oh, I'm too busy. That's me exactly. Too busy this year, right? Too busy to really do what needs to be done. And I get this email. It's like, oh, we're having a family get together, la, la, la. Guilt immediately. Yes, I've been busy. Yes, I've had a lot going on. But we still need to be a giver. Because if not, we become the taker. By not doing anything, we become the taker. And that is not what we want. Because when we're the taker, things are taken from us. Lots and lots of things can be taken from us. And I say that with complete honesty. We aren't going to be perfect in every area all the time. I'm the first one to say, I totally screwed up, right? And yet, with my family, they're probably like, no, you're not the first one to admit that. But I'm the first one to go, I should have done this. And I don't want to get into the should haves, but by not doing things, we become a taker. It's actively being involved that we are the giver. And the giver is the one that wins every time. The giver is the busiest person, but also the most blessed, has the most abundance, the most clients, the most friends, and the most ability. They work on the gifts and the talents they're given, and it expands. And they become better at those things. One of the things that I've always tried to pay attention to is that child, being the child that can do. You know, when recently, last week, we went through an uncle dying, and he'd had a good life in his 80s. We randomly went to a birthday party for him. We were the only cousins, my husband and I were the only couple outside of the original children and grandchildren that showed up to this party. Now, all of the aunts and uncles were invited, and all of their kids and all the grandkids were all invited to this birthday party. And we went to the birthday party. I had a couple different motives as to why I wanted to go. I wanted to see a couple of people, and I definitely wanted to be there for his birthday. And as we were there, I said to my husband, I'm like, you know, he's just not doing very good. I'll bet this is the last time I see him alive. And we left going, we're really glad we came, even though we were the only one. Out of siblings, cousins, everyone. We were the only ones to go that weren't immediate family. And within 2 weeks, he passed away. And at the funeral, everybody was like, oh, you were there. You're so lucky you were there. Yes, I was blessed and lucky that I was there. But it was also because I was being a giver. I was taking up my time showing up to a birthday party for an 86-year-old man to be able to give, to be able to go. And by doing so, I received. I got to spend those last few days of his life, be able to tell him what I thought of him, how much I cared about him, and be able to be there. I also got to witness all of the cousins, all of the grandchildren, all of his children enjoying time with him at a very, very delicate stage of life. Those are the kinds of things where when you become a giver and you do giving things on a consistent basis, it becomes part of you. You are the first to volunteer. You are the one that when something happens, people call because they know they can count on you. They know you'll be there. They know you'll step up because you're a giver. And that does make a big difference. I know that I've given you several examples, a lot of meat in this. If you really dive down and break it apart, tons of meat in this episode. I want you to know that by being a giver, life is good. And the more you're a giver, the more you get back. Your abundance grows, your friends, your relationships heal, things are better. So I encourage you to be a giver. I encourage you to take a good look at your life. Just go the last week. Go day by day. Was I a giver or a taker in different instances? Work, home, community, family. See if you were a giver or a taker. Are you the one that you know, rubs your spouse's feet with lotion? I was a taker. I was a definite taker on that. But it gets to be a two-way street because pretty soon you stop receiving if you're not being a giver. So look at those aspects of your life and write down and really recognize. You know, like I said, when we went through this in the training, when we went through this process of you're a giver or a taker, people can tell right from just looking at you what you are. And there'll be sometimes you're judged inappropriately, but for the most part, people can feel it, sense it, and know. If you're a taker, people will avoid you. Automatically avoid. They don't want to be around it. They don't want to be taken advantage of. They don't want you to take from them, and they don't want to have to entertain you or take care of you. So take a good look. It can be a hard look and harsh, but take a good look and move forward because it's possible. It's a choice. Again, I want to be a giver. Go to my website, allthingspossible.biz. Again, that's allthingspossible.biz right here on the screen. And take advantage of the 7 traits. It's 7 traits to live by that will ultimately change your life. And go to click the contact us and let me know if you would like your strategy session so we can move your life forward. Thanks again for being here today, and look forward to you next time when we'll be talking about being the receiver versus the server. The server and the receiver are a big issue that are very complementary to this, and I can help you to understand if you're being a receiver or a taker. So thanks for joining me, and again, come back and visit us soon at All Things Possible TV. I'm Kris Barney, and I'm glad you were here with me. Bye-bye. Have a great week.